Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss the Odyssey from 2026, starring Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, John Bernthal, Elliot Page, Mia Goth, Logan Marshall Green, John Leguizamo, Samantha Morton, Benny Safdie, Zendaya, and Charlize Theron, directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, before I get into this review, I have seen this movie twice, and this movie's rewarding, like any Christopher Nolan movie is rewarding on multiple viewings. And the reason I put out the 2026 in the beginning of the show, as well as on the title of the review, is because this is there was a TV movie back in the late 1990s, 1997, as it was a TV movie, and I watched this as well as the Wolfgang Petersen's Troy, starring Brad Pitt, before that came out in 2004. I thought about reviewing those, but the truth is, I didn't think it was gonna matter too much. So let's just get into this Odyssey. This is based on a poem by Homer, and it doesn't say not Homer Simpson, but a man named Homer who is in the Greek mythology and who wrote those stories of Troy and this as well. So let's see if this is worth seeing. Let's get into the movie. We open at the dining table in the home or the palace of Odysseus, where Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson, takes over with his friend Polybus, played by Straight Outta Compton's Corey Hawkins, while Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, is disgusted by what Antinous and Polybus has done with the place. As we flash back to Antinous' brother Sinan, excuse me, played by Elliot Page, getting speared to death by a couple of men from Troy, while Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, is hiding in the Trojan horse as a gift to Troy with some men in order to invade Troy. While we get interrupted by Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, who entertains a bunch of men with Antinous and Polybus, while Odysseus has been missing for nearly 20 years, while Antinous is led to believe Odysseus is never coming back, while Telemachus believes he's coming back while he hasn't heard of he's alive quite yet. And so much is going on in this scene that I'm gonna have to that I can't even focus. Maybe when it comes out on Blu-ray, it'll click more with me than on what's happening at this point. And it'll take multiple viewings to understand it. While we move on to Telemachus learning sword fighting, while the doggy Odysseus is given to by Eumaeus, played by John Leguizamo, who's a mentor to Odysseus and Telemachus. And this is an all-star cast with very likable and unforgettable characters. Odysseus goes to war with Troy for Agamemnon, played by Benny Safdie, while he recruits warriors as he recruits Sinan, but not Antinous, so he can look over to Telemachus and Penelope. As we move forward to Telemachus and Penelope, and we flash back to Odysseus telling Penelope if he doesn't come back, marry someone else, and she refuses while slapping him for saying that. And the acting in this whole movie is very well done by the actors, and she begs him to wear this, I'm gonna say, pin on him that makes her remember her, and when he comes back, she'll recognize that it belongs to her. And we move on back to Telemachus, start trying to string the bow, and Odysseus is the only one who can string the bow. And the cinematography is amazing to look at. Eumaeus tells Melanthius, played by Logan Marshall Green, he's too loud with his armor, while he hears the hunting dog being kicked around while he's by Polybus, and it was a poor dog, and I felt bad for that poor doggy. And Telemachus tries to stop Polybus, but he's got Telemachus on the ground, and Antinous throws the dog outside of the palace, and Telemachus has had enough to a point he asks a maid for to get a boat ready, and goes to Sparta, while Odysseus imagines Athena, played by Zendaya, talking to him until Calypso, played by Charlize Theron, keeps Odysseus as her captive prisoner. And Calypso asks him what is the last thing he remembered after Troy. And he remembers winning the war as he leads Agamemnon into victory over Troy by putting together the Trojan horse, while they've been in Troy long enough, and goes home on boat and Eurylacus, played by yesterday's Hamish Patel. And this is an amazing looking on his side. And this is an amazing looking movie with an all-star cast, and it's beautifully shot and absolutely well made throughout. Odysseus tells Calypso about a land where they get trapped in a cave with a rock by a Cyclops, played by Bill Irwin, along with his sheep, while a couple of his men are killed and eaten by the Cyclops, and it goes to sleep, as well as Odysseus and Eurylacus, as well as their men, and it wakes up and eats one of the men, while others stay behind, and quite a few of them escape, as they stab the Cyclops in the eyeball later that day, and or maybe in the night time, I couldn't tell you, and manage to escape. And this scene is fucking intense as hell. And kudos to director Christopher Nolan for telling this epic story in a fantastic way. After escaping the Cyclops' cave, Odysseus shows the Cyclops in the eyeball, or shoots the Cyclops in the eyeball, while others running into the forest and getting to their boats, and the Cyclops kills a couple of the warriors off in the water and calls a curse from Poseidon, because he was the son of God, of the god Poseidon, to make them not be able to get home to Athena. And we move forward to learn Odysseus has been with Calypso for a long time, and Telemachus gets to Sparta and meets with King Menelaus, played by John Bernthal, and his wife Helen of Troy, or Helen of Sparta now, played by Lupita Nyong'o, who recognizes Telemachus as Odysseus' son. And he tells the story, and Menelaus tells the story of how they invaded Troy and won the war. And this scene that was in the prologue in front of the re-release versions of Sinners and One Battle After Another, and as well as the 70mm print of Project Hail Mary, and was digitally shown in front of Avatar Fire and Ash, if you saw that digitally. And this movie is tightly edited for being nearly 3 hours long. It is long, I will admit that out of the way, but it was edited tightly, in my opinion, as it keeps you on the edge of your seat, while the costume design in this is tremendous. After King Menelaus tells him the story, Telemachus learns he last saw him in Troy, as he learned Agamemnon's wife and sister of Helen, Clytemnestra, also played by Lupita Nyong'o. While we get to that story later, and Odysseus goes through a storm and go to a land of giants as the warriors ask for food in front of the child, and the warriors get back to the ships while a couple get flipped over. And this is another intense scene. And while I'm thinking to myself, this movie is fucking amazing to watch, as the writing in this is very well written. Eurylochus is at this point against Odysseus, like he got men killed, and arrive on a beach as he gets the men that are left alive talking, and believe Odysseus should stay behind as he goes hunting, while the other men confront a witch named Circe, played by Minority Report's Samantha Morton, who has food and makes them eat while they eat like fucking pigs and transform into pigs themselves, which is a very haunting scene. And there is a rumor that Christopher Nolan wants to make a horror film, and I think that might be his next project after this. I could be wrong, but it's just a rumor. Odysseus learns other men transformed into animals after shooting a deer down, and he goes to the house and tries to warn his men that she's a witch of some kind. As he comes to the house and sees the food is poisoned by the witch and doesn't eat the pigs that are his men, and he begs Circe to turn his men back into men, and she does after Odysseus learns about Circe's sister. And the production design and set decoration in this was absolutely well done in this whole movie. Circe tells Odysseus to show blood as they show the truth of the underworld, including Sinon, who tells them he lied to everyone, while we flash back to Odysseus making Sinon believe in what they're doing, while Agamemnon tells the story of how he got home and killed by his wife Clytemnestra, along with her lover, because he made a sacrifice to her daughter, their daughter, I'll say, and which was, and he just throws her in the and kills her off as a sacrifice, and which was told by many Safdie as well as other men from the underworld. And the men get chased by the underworld, and there are a lot of great shots in this movie, as these scenes are one of them. We go back to Odysseus and Calypso as she says he will remember her, while Penelope's handmaiden Melantho, played by Mia Goth, who doesn't make an impression on me whatsoever, lets in Antinous and to talk with her, to talk about her marrying again, while he believes Odysseus is never coming back, while this motherfucker with Polybus comes off as slimy as fuck, while Melantho tells Antinous Penelope is lying about where Telemachus is, while Eumaeus overhears them, and Antinous tells Eumaeus he's caught by Melanthius. Eumaeus, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong anymore, I'm sorry, is no longer welcome to the house. While Menelaus plays a game of hit the bird with bows and arrows, and Telemachus, while Menelaus tells Telemachus he needs to rule without Odysseus, while Odysseus and his men row the boat while the men put earwax in their ears. So Odysseus is the only one hearing the siren song while getting tortured and tied up. And I like we get a point of view of the men's ears, while the one's getting tortured swims to the island and eventually releases him. And I really like the point of view of what Christopher Nolan was doing in that scene. Poseidon attacks the ship while they pull to the side with the score and make it out alive, being intense and great at the same time. As some men get killed, and the men, including Eurylochus, doesn't believe in Odysseus anymore until he says they're all going to die and get to a beach where Calypso is at, and we get Calypso appearing while at night, and we see the men making a fire for death as Athena appears and talks to Odysseus, and she's in it for a little, like some of the other actors that are not the main characters. And this movie is spectacular. That when I saw this in IMAX 70mm, everyone was engrossed by the movie, and there were cheers at the beginning and when one of the characters gets killed. I'll talk about it then. And at the end, and that is what Christopher Nolan does best, and that is the best way to see this movie, in my opinion. IMAX 70mm. A storm, comes towards them while on sea, and we get back to Odysseus and Calypso, who found Odysseus wounded but not dead on her island, as she comes to love Odysseus, as she tells him he's been on her island for 7 years, and he's ready to go home to Penelope, and goes on sea back to Athena, which is home, and he gets there while Athena approaches him, saying he's home. Meanwhile, Antinous sends some men to slaughter some of Eumaeus' pigs and dogs off screen, and he burns them, Eumaeus, after he sees them getting killed. And Odysseus approaches Eumaeus as he looks very unrecognizable, as he's grown a beard and gray hair, while Telemachus goes back to Ithaca from Sparta as he says his goodbyes to King Menelaus and Helen. And I hate how they killed off a few dogs off screen, one of them on screen in the beginning of the movie, and pigs. But I'm enjoying this movie at this point. I think it's really well done. Telemachus gets to a place where Odysseus comes in as a disguise, as a beggar, and he has a message for Telemachus while visiting Antinous' men, poisoning Telemachus, and his bodyguard, as the bodyguard gets named Mentor, gets poisoned by not Telemachus and Odysseus, as they live, Telemachus and Odysseus, but the Mentor dies, and Telemachus and Odysseus saves Telemachus' life and disguises himself with the name Sinon, like Antinous' brother, and they burn the building and make a run for it. And he tells Telemachus Odysseus is alive and is close by, as well as not telling Penelope. And Telemachus returns to the palace along with stories about Odysseus and Antinous. And Melantho appeared pretty suspicious at this point, and Telemachus tells Penelope the beggar has a plan for Penelope to have her remarry, and not telling the full plan, while getting Eumaeus back to the palace, while with Odysseus disguised as Sinon and the beggar. And at this point in the movie, I believe it is a masterpiece. Telemachus sees Odysseus bringing Eumaeus into the palace and tells Telemachus to bury the dog at the mountain, as Telemachus believes he's Odysseus in the quietest way possible, while they enter with Odysseus looking like a beggar, as Polybus and Antinous come off, acts like a couple of assholes to him while giving Polybus food and Antinous a little stick he has since he was a kid and doesn't believe it is his, while Odysseus disguises himself as his brother Sinon's name. And Antinous beats up on Odysseus, and Telemachus says the feast is over, and Melantho tells Odysseus Penelope wishes to speak with him, and disguises himself as Sinon while one of the maids washes his feet and realizes it's Odysseus, but he tells her not to say anything and explains Odysseus to her, while Athena is there as the audience is shown his guilt while burning down Troy. And the acting by Matt Damon and Anne Hathaway was well done in this movie, as their performances with the other actors were tremendous. Meanwhile, Antinous tries to find a way to kill out Telemachus, while Odysseus tells Penelope he's alive but disguised as the beggar, and Penelope makes a challenge for her new husband, while Eumaeus and guards hides the weapons from the bad guys, and her challenge is to put the bow together and aim it in a piece of wood while there's things blocking it. As we get great shots, including the iconic shot of Anne Hathaway holding the bow with Mia Goth behind her. Penelope tells the bad guys who want to marry her the challenge, and one man after another try to put the bow together until Polybus and none of them can do it, until eventually, Odysseus as a beggar, steps right up and tries to, and as he does it, Antinous with the bad guys realize it's really Odysseus, and he's back with Polybus is killed, and that's when the audience cheered on my first viewing. While Melantho is betrayed by Penelope as she betrayed them in this entire goddamn movie. While we get a great action sequence with Odysseus killing one single last one of the bad guys, while Eumaeus tells Melanthius he's too loud and locks him in while getting weapons for the bad guys as he digs a hole, and Telemachus fights off Melanthius while dropping the weapons, spears, and shields a floor below them until Odysseus gets stabbed in the stomach by the spear, and he's a tough guy. He'll pull it out. And as the action sequences in this movie was great, Telemachus wins the fight with anyways, while Odysseus is surrounded by Telemachus, until Telemachus gives Odysseus a sword and kills the last bad guy, including Antinous, which I could have applauded it during that moment, but I didn't. But Antinous dies, which serves the motherfucker right, as Odysseus is back as he's almost dies, and gives Penelope her pin back, and he sees his beloved one last time, as well as Athena. And Penelope sees he's back, and they leave the kingdom as Telemachus becomes king and becomes a man of his own as they set sail together on the sea. And the climax was very well done, but will this be another masterpiece from Christopher Nolan? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 9.4 out of 10. I like the characters as they're likable and an unforgettable purpose, as the acting is very well done by the actors, and the cinematography is amazing to look at. And this is an amazing looking movie with an all-star cast, and it's beautifully shot and absolutely well made throughout. And the scene with the Cyclops is fucking intense, and kudos to director Christopher Nolan for telling this epic story in a fantastic way. It is tightly edited for being nearly 3 hours. It's a little too long, but I was rolling with it, as it keeps you on the edge of your seat, while the costume designing in this is tremendous. While the writing in this is very well written throughout, while an hour into the movie, I'm thinking this movie is fucking amazing to watch, as this is an amazing movie, as it is a haunting, but it's slightly better than Oppenheimer in my opinion. The production design and set decoration in this is absolutely well done in this whole movie, and this is a strong recommendation for this movie, as the action in this is great, while the score and sound was great, and this is going with the masterpieces along with Memento, The Dark Knight, Inception, and Oppenheimer, as well as Dunkirk. As I really enjoyed this movie very much, and I will buy this on 4K Blu-ray and will continue to watch this again and again, like the movies I brought up. And there are some great shots in this whole movie, and I heard a rumor Christopher Nolan's next movie is a horror movie, and I'm curious about it. I could be wrong, and if you were to see this in any ways, please see it on the biggest IMAX screen ever, as the 70mm choice was well done, and at the end of it, it made the movie and experience amazing. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for coming back to Christopher Nolan, and until he ever makes up for a next movie in the next 3 years, see you later.